Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. Looking kind of northern today. Just brushed up the beard. I don't know if it's the shirt or what it is. Just sort of making me look kind of lumberjacky or something. I don't know. The North has been on my mind recently. I miss the North. I miss the seasons. Sort of feeling like I've been on vacation too long in this Floridian climate. Like I just kind of overstayed my trip to the beach. But yeah, missing the North, missing the seasons, missing a lot of the mountains, the fog, the rain, all that jazz, you know. So the coffee, the books. But I recently ventured up north to St. Louis, Missouri for a meeting. It was cold, foreboding, bleak, grim this time of year, you know. It was cool to look at. It just seemed pretty dark in many ways. But I'd like to explore it more. So of course I got to thinking about writers from Missouri, and lo and behold, one of the greatest hails from that state, Mr. Mark Twain. And I haven't read any Twain, I'm embarrassed to admit. The film director Jim Jarmusch mentioned this story as one of his favorites. This is the short story, The Diary of Adam and Eve by Mark Twain. I've had The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn staring at me for years over there on the shelf, and I have to get to it. And regarding Jarmusch, I mean, you can definitely see the influence on his film Only Lovers Left Alive about the vampires with Tilda Swinton. Cesar Aira, the last author I reviewed, was saying something like, what great authors can do in their long novels, they can also do in their short ones. And when I read short stories like this, I absolutely believe that. Few short stories have made me laugh and cry. Few books have caused me to have even one of those reactions, let alone both, period. When I say that, I mean the same story causing both emotions authentically and immediately. Like having the reaction, I'm not even thinking about it, you know? It just happens. In fact, I can't think of another story that has done both for me. Mark Twain has successfully made me laugh several times, out loud, true laughter. I mean real, uncontrollable cracks of mirth, whatever you'd like to call it. And then in the ending with the last line, he hits it home, and it is so painful my eyes are welling up immediately after I finish it. Not big sobs, but yeah, a little teary-eyed, because it's sad. Maybe more so, maybe it's even heightened because it was so funny. You know, I'm sure it is. You have that contrast, so you have the spectrum, and it makes it more effective. It makes it feel more authentic and human. Samuel Langhorne Clemens barely needs an introduction. Except, of course, if you're using that name, he most certainly does. Because he was also the famous American author Mark Twain. I've read folks who have been influenced by Twain, such as Faulkner, who according to Wikipedia called him the father of American literature. No big deal or anything. Telling a joke in person is difficult. Producing a comedic film seems very difficult. Writing a sentence that consistently delivers guffaws seems, to me, like the biggest challenge one could take on. Maybe not, but I'm not, you know, I don't do a lot of comedic writing, so I'm not sure. It seems challenging to me, or for me. In order for his sentences to have this effect, though, it seems like it has something to do with stripping away everything that's unnecessary. The opposite of Faulkner and closer to the style that Hemingway would employ. Hemingway was also influenced, heavily it seems, by Twain. In the literature notes to A Farewell to Arms on Cliff Notes, it says that Hemingway, who identified Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as the source of all American literature, recognized this archetype, then updated and refined it. Very interesting. So we're working back through the influences, right? Peeling back the layers of history and literature. Seeing who inspired who. It's the most beautiful and compelling journey to embark on. And in a way, it's the one that tells you the story of yourself and your own influences and your history. You mix this with psychology and philosophy and biology, and all of a sudden, from insatiable curiosity, patterns begin to emerge. There's a narrative that starts to form, and it's still happening. But now, the pen is in your hand. Could there be any more exciting realization? So the question is, what are you going to write? It's as if the story of humanity were one enormous book, with each line written by a different master. Ongoing, we don't know where it stops or how it ends, who the protagonist is or who started writing. But we keep writing. We have to. It happens without us. We write unconsciously. Even if we try to procrastinate or deliberately sabotage our own creative efforts, it still goes on. Anyways, this is an idea of where it started. A humorous, clever idea. Working with what we have from the most famous book we have, which is, of course, the Bible. So Twain is sort of playing with the idea that the first book, the one that continues today with you and I, so to speak, was written by Adam and Eve. And it wasn't a novel so much as it was two separate journals, diaries with daily entries. It's probably the funniest book I've ever read. Don Quixote made me laugh as well, but as far as quantity, this takes the cake. We should strive to write more literature that makes us laugh. I think there's an underappreciation of witty humor. But again, seems like hard work to get it right. It's about Adam and Eve and their time in the Garden of Eden, their growing love for one another, their discovery of all the animals, and of course their expulsion from the garden after eating the apple. Adam's diary, the first part of the book, is the most humorous. It goes something like this. Friday. The naming goes recklessly on, in spite of anything I can do. I had a very good name for the estate, and it was musical and pretty. Garden of Eden. Privately, I continue to call it that, but not any longer publicly. The new creature, Eve, says it is all woods and rocks and scenery, and therefore has no resemblance to a garden. Says it looks like a park, but does not look like anything but a park. Consequently, without consulting me, it has been new named Niagara Falls Park. This is sufficiently high-handed, it seems to me. And already there is a sign up, keep off the grass. My life is not as happy as it was. You're reading about a man and a woman trying to understand each other, trying to comprehend and navigate the differences between the sexes and the conflict that arises. Except they're the very first ones, ever. So they have no point of reference except for the other animals in the garden, which Eve gives names to immediately, having these flashes of inspiration for how things should be named. A talent Adam does not possess, apparently. It is one of the many things about her that annoys him. In fact, initially, neither one of them think they're even the same species. Twain takes the opportunity to poke fun at the oddities of creation described in the Bible, but with more wit than malice. Tuesday. She told me she was made out of a rib taken from my body. This is at least doubtful, if not more than that. I have not missed any rib. So I'm reading Adam in a voice that could be attributed to a Twain character, in my head as I'm going along in the story. This comically no-nonsense, pragmatic, manly man who does things that make total sense to him, but which of course when you read it seem absurd or outrageously incorrect. Of course, because he's the first man and he has no clue what's actually happening. He thinks, for example, that the baby Eve has, Cain, is at first a fish. Then he thinks it's a kangaroo. Then as it grows older, a bear, but a strange one. Basically, he goes on a trip, or he goes on like a hunting trip or something, I forget. But then he comes back and, all of a sudden she has this baby and he has no idea what it is. Because she was pregnant and gave birth, we assume, while he was gone. But he has no idea what that means. He doesn't even know it's human. When Eve eats the forbidden fruit, the apple of knowledge, after being lured by Satan disguised as a snake, in Adam's journal he writes, Tuesday, she is taken up with a snake now. The other animals are glad, for she was always experimenting with them and bothering them. And I am glad, because the snake talks, and this enables me to get a rest. Friday. She says the snake advises her to try the fruit of the tree, and says the result will be a great and fine and noble education. I told her there would be another result, too. It would introduce death into the world. That was a mistake. It had been better to keep the remark to myself. It only gave her an idea. She could save the sick buzzard and furnish fresh meat to the despondent lions and tigers. I advised her to keep away from the tree. She said she wouldn't. I foresee trouble. We'll emigrate. So you see, they're different accounts and interpretations of the same events. It's very funny. Eve's diary depicts a young woman full of curiosity, doing similarly strange things like throwing clods at the stars, trying to knock one down as she would like to put one in her hair because she thinks they're so beautiful. She also thinks somebody's stealing the moon, but then she gets really happy when they give it back. She seems simultaneously childlike and playful, but actually a genius with a preoccupation with the beauty in things and philosophical questioning. This is Twain's inventive take on Eve's reason for eating the apple. This is from Eve's diary. I tried to get him some of those apples, but I cannot learn how to throw straight. I failed, but I think the good intention pleased him. They are forbidden, and he says I shall come to harm. But so I come to harm through pleasing him. Why shall I care for that harm? You witness the breakdown of communication. It's a very sweet gesture, which leads to, the worst thing in the world. This is very tragic during my second reading, as I can now see how such a simple thing leads to where it does. Isn't that how life goes? In a more humorous moment of her diary, in which she's wondering what's going on, she writes, Then if I am an experiment, am I the whole of it? No, I think not. I think the rest of it is part of it. I am the main part of it, but I think the rest of it has its share of the matter. Is my position assured, or do I have to watch it and take care of it? The latter, perhaps. Some instinct tells me that eternal vigilance is the price of supremacy. That is a good phrase, I think, for one so young. So years after they've been together and had children, we see the progression of their relationship, though we don't get up to the point where Abel is murdered by Cain. But in one point, Adam says, "I was mistaken about Eve in the beginning. It is better to live outside the garden with her than inside it without her. At first I thought she talked too much, but now I should be sorry to have that voice fall silent and pass out of my life." And this is where things start to get really sad. And I'll leave the ending for you to marvel at, though I'll say that they both come to the realization that this is it, their relationship. It's the meaning of life, and it's the most sustaining thing now that death is a reality. I'm kind of realizing that as I say it. You know? If you have a significant other who you really love and respect, that's it. That's the meaning of life. And if you don't have one, get on it. Now. Because there's plenty of other people that need one. And that might be you. That is the most sustaining thing now that death is a reality. And of course, this is their fate. And it's ours as well. We all must die. And Adam's last line, standing at the grave of Eve. And I was cracking up as I was even writing this review. Wheresoever she was, there was Eden. Wheresoever she was, there was Eden. Oh, it's better than food. Thank you for the support, everyone. Great to see you. Hope you're doing well. There will be more of a Twain biography and public reviews to come. And you can be sure there will be a lot more to come, as long as I'm breathing. Have a great night. Take care of yourselves. Stay strong. Ciao.